They dropped us in at 0200 hours. No moon, no stars, just black sky and the dry breath of the New Mexico desert whispering across the ridge. 6 of us, wrapped in matte black gear, NVGs locked, boots crunching over cracked soil that hadn't seen rain since the Clinton administration. The site wasn't marked. No lights, no fence, just a crater in the sand with reinforced scaffolding around it, and a smell like copper and burnt plastic bleeding up from the earth. Sergeant Medina motioned for us to stack up. The entrance wasn't natural. It was a steel-lined borehole punched into the ground with precision, too perfect for any mining company. The scaffolding had been twisted, some of it scorched. Whatever crew had been down here first, they didn't make it out. A tarp snapped in the wind behind us. We went in. The shaft dropped 80 feet straight down, a reinforced elevator tunnel that now only served as a tomb. We fast roped into the dark. The walls weren't dirt or rock. They were smooth metal, blackened, like it had been flash-fried. My gloves stuck slightly as I slid down the rope. At the bottom, our boots hit rust-colored dust. The light from Medina's rifle beam cut through the dark like a scalpel, revealing nothing at first. A wide corridor, walls carved with patterns that looked organic, veins, not wires, and deeper in, that same awful smell. 2 mics on sweep, weapons hot, Medina ordered. Stay frosty. This isn't a rescue op. We moved forward. Every breath through the mask tasted foul, like wet iron and ammonia. Then, something cracked under my boot. I looked down, a shattered helmet still attached to part of a spine. Contact, murmured Jones through comms. Negative, I whispered. Remains. Not fresh. That wasn't true. It was fresh. Too fresh. We passed what was left of the contractor team, or at least what hadn't been digested. Their bodies had been rearranged, not just killed, studied, limbs extended, bones exposed, organs extracted and pinned with fleshy strands of material that pulsed faintly. One guy's skull was split open and his brain was still twitching. No sign of blood splatter. They weren't killed here, said Kit. They were brought. The tunnel widened into a chamber. My NVGs fuzzed with static the moment we crossed the threshold. The air changed, thicker, warmer. Breathing was like sucking steam through a straw. And then we saw them. They weren't little gray men. They were tall, 8 feet, maybe more. Skeletal frames wrapped in biomechanical plating, with limbs that bent in places limbs shouldn't. Eyes like molten obsidian, and wires, dozens of them, still threading in and out of their flesh, keeping them upright, hanging from the ceiling like they were being downloaded into the wreckage. Jesus, murmured someone. They were alive, still breathing, barely. But they weren't alone. Something hatched in the dark behind them, a sound like splitting cartilage. And then it moved. We weren't the first visitors, but we would be the first witnesses. It moved fast, whatever it was. I didn't even see it, just heard the wet crunch of bone and the scream that followed. Kit. One blink, he was in the stack behind me. Next blink, gone. Dragged backward into the shadows like he'd been yanked by a chain. The only thing left was his rifle, spinning on the floor, and a long trail of viscous fluid that wasn't blood. Not his, anyway. "Eyes on," Medina barked. "Form perimeter." But our perimeter meant nothing down here. The NVGs were useless now, green static choking every feed. Whatever signal was bleeding through the air, it was frying everything. Comms dropped, HUDs went black. We were on our own, blind except for flashlights. I swept my beam across the chamber. The suspended aliens were still there, still watching. No movement, no breath, just twitching eyes in mechanical sockets. Then came the sound. It wasn't a growl or a scream. It was clicking, like thousands of legs tapping hollow steel. The tunnel vibrated with it, not from behind us, but from above. We looked up, and that's when we saw what they'd been building. The ceiling was lined with sacks, pods. Some were open, oozing fluid. Others pulsed with movement. Thin membranes stretched as something inside writhed. Then one of them burst. A creature dropped out. It hit the floor in front of us with a wet smack, stood, and screamed. A gurgling, high-pitched shriek that rattled my skull. It was taller than a man, thin but powerful, like a praying mantis made of bone and metal, its mouth too wide, eyes covered in fleshy lenses. No face, just hunger. We opened fire. Rounds tore through it, but it didn't die like it should have. Its body absorbed impact, twisting unnaturally. It kept coming, even as we shredded it. Finally, Medina emptied his sidearm into the thing's head at point blank. It collapsed in a twitching heap, limbs still spasming. "We're leaving," he said, "right now." We turned back to the shaft. It was gone, sealed shut. The metal had reformed behind us, as if the tunnel healed. Another scream, then another. From the pods, dozens of them. They weren't just creating creatures. They were replicating, cloning, adapting, and it was accelerating. The pods began to drop like fruit from a rotting tree, one by one. Plop, plop, plop. The hatchlings were smaller, faster. We ran. The corridors weren't the same anymore. The floor shifted beneath us, bending. The walls breathed. The tunnel had become organic. We weren't in ruins anymore. We were inside something alive. We found Kit's body, or what was left of it. They'd cracked open his ribcage and threaded some kind of tubing through it, feeding into the wall. His eyes were still open, still blinking, but there was no soul behind them. The worst part? His mouth moved. Not a scream, not a plea, just two words. "They're learning." We didn't speak after Kit. None of us had words for what we'd just seen. Hughes dropped the satchel charges. He didn't wait for orders. He just started priming the timers with trembling hands, mumbling the Lord's Prayer between breaths. Medina didn't stop him. "Collapse the tunnels. Burn everything," he said. "Even us if we don't get out." The problem was, we had no exit. The tunnel kept shifting. Each corridor we tried to backtrack through now opened into a new chamber, as if the structure had mapped us, and then changed its body to trap us, like it was playing. "Form up," Medina whispered, motioning toward a chamber that looked less alive than the others. "If we're dying down here, we're doing it fighting." But the room we found wasn't just some chamber. It was a nursery, and it was full. Hundreds of pods, rows of them, translucent skin stretched over embryonic shapes, some humanoid, some insectile, all pulsing with veins and twitching limbs. Some were bigger than men, some were still forming, and some looked like us. I saw a figure in one pod that wore my face, still incomplete, skin unformed, bones visible beneath stretching flesh. A copy, a clone, but wrong. Its jaw unhinged as I approached, and even from inside the fluid, it smiled. The same smile I hadn't seen since childhood. My brother's. He died in Fallujah. There was no way they knew, but they did. They weren't just copying our biology. They were copying our memories. That's when the lights above us dimmed, the air filled with that familiar clicking, and from every surface, walls, ceilings, even the floor, they began to emerge. Dozens, maybe more, fully grown. The originals still hung in their sockets, rotting monarchs at the heart of a new empire, but their children, their army, was complete. Medina ordered the last of the charges armed. We make a stand here, hold them back, detonate on my mark. But the creatures didn't charge. They watched. One stepped forward, taller than the rest, wearing something that might have once been a man's ribcage as armor, and strapped to its side, in pieces, was Hughes's comms pack, still blinking, still transmitting. It spoke, not in a voice, but in a patchwork of our voices, spliced together like audio stitched with a rusty needle. Your leaders knew we never crashed. Then came the pulse, not from the creature, but from deep beneath us. The floor cracked, heat, light, a surge of radiation that lit up the pods. They began to hatch, all of them, and above us, embedded in the rock ceiling, metal roots twisted open, revealing the final piece of the truth. The ship was never wreckage. It was a seed, and it had bloomed. Medina didn't wait. He screamed, "Detonate!" and slammed his hand on the trigger. Everything went white. I woke up 4 days later in a sterile black site facility. My arm was gone. So were Medina and the others. A man in a lab coat told me it was a gas explosion, a mining accident. I didn't argue, but I still see it when I close my eyes. The way they moved, the way they watched. And I remember what it said. We never crashed. We invited them, buried them, fed them. And now, they're not hiding anymore. They're waiting. If you're still breathing, go ahead and like the video. Subscribe if you dare. There are plenty more nightmares waiting for you. And whatever you do, don't forget to ring the bell. It's the only way you'll hear the warnings in time.